What's up, everybody? John the Morgal here for a quick video that pertains to a topic I don't usually cover, and I'm honestly not very interested in politics or the election. For my entire life, I've seen a conga line of incompetent, super rich plutocrats acting as CEO of a corporation known as the United States. I'm convinced that an individual vote couldn't possibly count, even from the most optimistic viewpoint, wherein the Electoral College votes are the only ones that really count, and yet we find that even these are no longer even slightly representative when at some time, previously they might have been just slightly representative. Now, I've realized over the years that a candidate on the campaign trail will always blatantly lie and tell people what they want to hear and stroke their egos and stroke their special interests in order to get elected, and then proceed to do the opposite of what they promised to do during the campaign trail as a rule, providing favors for their cronies, breaks for their special interest groups, and of course backroom deals with their primary contributors and lobbyists, dropping their campaign promises like so many hot potatoes once they achieve their goal of reaching the office. Now, we all thought Obama was going to single-handedly, miraculously change the course of the nation for some reason, yet he turned out to be just another political puppet, an empty suit providing lip service to the people while massaging the special interests of super-rich foreign entities and even funding, arming, and directing proxy frenemies such as ISIS. Of course, it's fairly obvious that the seat of the president is always going to be a puppet for a larger agenda, which has been pre-planned for decades, unless the festering corrupt system is audited and purged at all levels. And the system I'm talking about is the U.S. government. Arguably, the last president to at least appear to have a real plan to save America was JFK, although even that is questionable. His open, well-explained plans, shouted from the rooftops, entailed getting rid of the Federal Reserve Bank and scattering the CIA to the winds, just for starters. Pretty soon after, foolishly announcing to the world all of this, he was apparently murdered in public in broad daylight. So it's no surprise that no other presidential candidate has challenged the Federal Reserve Bank openly, nor is it a surprise that George Bush 1 is suspected of being heavily involved in the assassination of JFK. The fact that he became CIA director and president of the United States in the years following JFK's assassination certainly doesn't hurt that theory. That he was involved and consequently rewarded for murdering America's, really one chance to shake the federal leech bank off its ass. Honestly, I agree that the only way to start getting our country back in line and prosperous is to axe the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a treasonous scam. In fact, one of the oldest scams in the book, but it works every time because history is often forgotten. If you're not familiar with the Federal Reserve scam slash central banking scam slash fractional reserve banking scam, please look into it. This central bank is owned by private foreign shareholders, and it's the primary reason for our country going down the shit river full steam ahead. Yet none of the candidates will talk about the giant elephant in the room that is the Federal Reserve scam. This is either because the nominees are unaware of the scam, like most people, or they are aware yet they have no plans on rocking the boat, which has made them both extravagantly rich. We haven't had an average person run for president since, well, probably ever. Remember, George Washington was only the first Freemasonic president. Under the Articles of Confederation, there were 7 or 8, I forget, but at least 7 presidents prior to George Washington who are never mentioned in history. He's always touted as the first. This is because I believe the bad guys actually won the Revolutionary War and wrote the history books to favor themselves, of course, which, that's always what occurs. The winners of wars certainly don't ever cast themselves in a poor light in the contemporary and now historical literature. Uh, for some reason, the people at large believe the president or the government, for that matter, has the ability to somehow create jobs. This is ridiculous. If the government creates any jobs, they're creating government payroll jobs, which are ultimately a burden on the people's tax money. They do not produce anything of value, such as NASA. They pass laws to expand their control at the expense of the citizens and ultimately tax every penny that we earn, every penny that we spend, every penny that we invest, making it more and more difficult for the working class to make ends meet, more difficult for small business owners to keep their doors open in favor of super corpses like Walmart, while the actual job creators, big businesses who have essentially fled this country in terms of their manufacturing due to the tax climate created by the government itself. It is really impossible for the government to create jobs or fight global warming or boost the economy without performing a total 180 of all of our current course of action, which we've been on for at least my entire life and probably long before I was born. If you consider the American people as a sovereign body, then the government jobs would be ticks or leeches sucking blood from the people, and boosting the economy would be tantamount to pumping the blood out of the right arm of the sovereign body directly into the left arm of the same body, spilling half the blood in the process to ensure that the ticks have plenty of blood to drink. This is a perfect picture at sort of a 10,000-foot view of your typical government job creation method. Anyone who remarks that these ticks may not be such a good thing for the body are labeled as conspiracy theorists or worse, terrorists, and may be arrested and held indefinitely without charge in gross opposition to our God-given rights described in the Constitution. Of course, you have the military-industrial complex, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry which does very well during wartime for some reason. So you could say that the U.S. government has done a great job boosting the economy by murdering people in other countries and are now targeting U.S. citizens in their spying programs. The war machine and espionage agencies have never done better. And so the Fed has the ability to rig the stock market, so the economy's doing just great, according to the numbers. As long as we're always at war and we continue fattening the pockets of foreign investors, nothing could go wrong with that, right? We don't actually need a productive economy or national pride or national unity to have, a good country. We just need lots of imaginary dollars flooding the markets and being shipped overseas to create the illusion of a vital economy. With all this being said, I'm not anti-government. I'm pro-constitution, which, by the way, is a criteria for being considered a domestic terrorist. If you can believe that, as incredible as that sounds, it's 100% true. But I'm not anti-government. I'm just very much in disagreement with the way our government has been run for my entire life. I was raised in a fairly liberal Democrat household growing up, and so I was under the impression that the Democratic Party was aligned to the average working class person, while the Republican Party was aligned to the sort of top earners, trickle-down economics, as Reagan coined.
Right. Reagan campaign message to minority voters, tape 37. Count it off, Mr. President.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Thank you, dear.
Al, smoking. We're in a groove now. That's groove, sir. Groove. We're in a groove now. Slip me a little keyboard, Cap. Al, good God. Now that'd be fine. Okay, people, gotta get down. Brother Ron Reagan has hit the ground. Gotta believe he's the dude of the hour. Got the glory, got the power. Ronnie can communicate, the cat can rap. I even let Nancy sit on Mr. T's lap. Loves the needy, loves them dearly. Love to read graffiti if they'd only put it clearly. He can break. He be trying to make the big box beat. trying to get those voters on their feet. Get their consent. All I
In
need
truth,
is
both parties are two wings of the same beast, a false dichotomy used to divide people on trivial differences, while the overall agenda of the single beast government remains the same, regardless of the empty suit playing the role of CEO. It's like picking your favorite ice cream out of 31 flavors, but you know that all 31 buckets of ice cream have poison in them. People align themselves with one political party or another based on the combination of flavors that they like the best, but in reality, the entire system or all of the buckets are a scam designed to keep people at odds with one another, while the ruling elite lace the ice cream with poison during the commotion, while our backs are turned. So, with that being said, I've never liked Donald Trump. Never. I've always hated the guy because he's obviously an extremely arrogant, inconsiderate, well, asshole. Hate is a strong word, and I don't use it often, but I can honestly say that based on everything I have seen and heard out of Trump throughout my life, I've always really sort of despised the guy. I hated his reality shows, and I don't really like people who gloat and brag about themselves and their accomplishments or brag about how smart they are, especially after having everything handed to them on a golden and diamond laced platter, as Trump did when he inherited his father's real estate business in New York. It's a little city, may have heard of it. But of course, Hillary and Bill Clinton began amassing their fortune by leveraging Bill's position as governor of Arkansas to scam retirees out of their homes using tricky, slick mortgages, not to mention importing drugs and exporting guns to and from foreign countries out of a small airport in Mena, Arkansas, even murdering people who got too close, as exposed in the film Buried by the mainstream media called The Clinton Murders. And the body count continues to rise in terms of people who get too close to the Clintons' scandals. But that's never going to be brought up in any of these election debates, which really leads me to question Donald Trump's integrity, very honestly. There's no possible way he's not aware of the Clinton body count. I mean, everyone knows about this, right? I really don't see how Trump could be unaware of the Federal Reserve scam either, which has been going on for over 100 years. So, what am I getting at? Am I going to vote for Trump or Hillary? Honestly, I don't like either of them at all, nor do I believe that any single president can change the course of the sinking ship of America, sort of like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, if you ask me. So, is this a choice of the lesser of two evils, or do we actually have a choice at all? Do our votes even count? Will the Electoral College vote in alignment with the will of the people, or in alignment with the people throwing the most money at them and their respective candidates? Will the votes be counted properly in the first place? It's doubtful. We simply cannot have another 4 years of Barack Obama, that's for sure, which is exactly what we'll get with Hillary. Now, as much as I really don't agree with Trump's personality, I will say confidently that he is honest, at least, even to a fault. He'll tell you what he's thinking. He's not going to sugarcoat his position to gain favor in the politically correct popularity contest. Now, I'm not so naive as to think that Donald Trump actually built anything with his bare hands, as he likes to claim. I've always really despised, people that claim, I built or this leader built this or constructed these skyscrapers. Such leaders merely had the money and credit to pay competent people to build these things, and they take the credit for all of that hard work as if, Donald Trump actually lifted a finger, other than to cut the ribbon at the photo op, but at least he didn't murder anyone or entrap seniors into tricky mortgages, leveraging his political position to enhance his portfolio. I think that simple honesty and political incorrectness are probably two of the finest qualities we've seen in a presidential nominee in a long time. Now, in spite of Donald J. Trump's obvious faults and character flaws, I'm not a Trump supporter. Again, I've never really liked the guy at all, and historically I've been aligned to the perceived Democratic Party ideals, prior to realizing the fallacy of the two-party Hegelian dialectic system, Now that I know this is all bullshit, I've got to say I like the fact that Republicans and Democrats despise Trump, if for no other reason than it's a unifying factor, or, of course, this means that he's a threat to the status quo, or a threat to both wings of this beast at some level. So to me, this is a big plus for Trump. I honestly believe that Donald Trump will do a better job as president compared to Hillary. Hillary has to pay people to attend her rallies, literally pay them, and still can barely fill a small auditorium. Trump is actually very popular because I believe he's simply honest to a fault, and he does know how to invest in domestic infrastructure. I would also say that, as much as I hate to admit it, I agree with Trump on a number of issues, if for no other reason than one, that he has alluded to the official 9/11 story being false, which is more than I can say for any other political figure. I can honestly say that Hillary is probably the most dishonest person we've ever had as a presidential nominee in history, which is saying a lot. If you're still entrenched in the Republican-Democrat dichotomy, I urge you to set aside your dislike for Trump, the person, or your moral attachment to your perceived political party, and vote for the person who you think will at least be honest. Trump may be arrogant, ignorant, he may be a narcissist, and even a misogynist, but I don't think he's evil. I believe, on the other hand, that Hillary is the epitome of evil, and if she gets into the White House, we're going to be in really big trouble. Hillary should honestly be indicted for everything from obstruction of justice, perjury, murder, and much more. Donald Trump is an asshole, okay? So one's a felon and one's an asshole. Apparently, that doesn't make a difference in terms of presidential nominees. I mean, do we no longer vet these people? So with that little bit aside, who will be better for the country? That's the big question. The woman who exclaims, "We will raise taxes on the middle class,"
And we are going to raise taxes on the middle class.
or the man who says we're going to lower taxes across the board and provide a climate conducive to bringing manufacturing jobs back to America. That is one thing that a president can do, is to lower corporate taxes in order to, make America more attractive to actual job creators. But the government is never going to actually create productive jobs. Now, I never in a million years thought I would hear myself say this, honestly, but I believe Donald Trump is the better choice between the two candidates, as he is obviously by far the lesser of two evils. Certainly, he would not be my first choice, by a long shot, but we don't really have much of a choice, now do we? Now, I'm not going so far as to say he's going to be the savior of America as we know it, as some in the alternative community are claiming, but I will say that if Hillary becomes president, we're in deep shit. So this is my official endorsement of Donald Trump as the lesser of two evils for president, as much as it kills me to say it, or just baffles me that I'm saying this. Indeed, I'm one of those who will fall under the category of Trump haters who support Trump over Hillary. So, if you vote for any of the minority candidates because you don't like Trump, then it's a vote for Hillary. If you vote for Hillary because you're a Democrat, study up on the Clinton murders. If you vote for Trump, it might be a vote for Hillary anyway, as it's very obvious that the electronic voting is wide open to manipulation, error, and fraud. So I'm just falling for the two-party tactic, which only provides the illusion of choice? Maybe I am. Do I think electing Donald Trump will actually change anything in the long run? Probably not. But at least with Trump, I believe that we may have a chance, and he might actually keep his word after being elected. So let's just pray that our votes are counted fairly, and that World War III doesn't erupt in the next 2 weeks. Cheers. Count, even from the most optimistic viewpoint, wherein the Electoral College votes are the only ones that really count, and yet we find that even these are no longer even slightly representative, when at some time, previously they might have been just slightly representative. Now, I've realized over the years that a candidate on the campaign trail will always blatantly lie and tell people what they want to hear and stroke their egos. Now, we all thought Obama was going to single-handedly, miraculously change the course of the nation for some reason, yet he turned out to be just another political puppet, an empty suit providing lip service to the people while massaging the special interests of super-rich foreign entities and even funding, arming, and directing proxy frenemies such as ISIS. Of course, it's fairly obvious that the What's up, everybody? John the Morgal here for a quick video that pertains to a topic I don't usually cover, and I'm honestly not very interested in politics or the election. For my entire life, I've seen a conga line of incompetent, super rich plutocrats acting as CEO of a corporation known as the United States. I'm convinced that an individual vote couldn't possibly stroke their special interests in order to get elected and then proceed to do the opposite of what they promised to do during the campaign trail as a rule, providing favors for their cronies, breaks for their special interest groups, and of course backroom deals with their primary contributors and lobbyists, dropping their campaign promises like so many hot potatoes once they achieve their goal of reaching the office.